Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Woodside SDA Youth, where we are doing 365 Days with Jesus, or in other words, the Bible reading plan. And today, we're supposed to read the book of Judges, chapter 6 to chapter 8. And we touched on the famous story of Gideon, guys. So we have covered how many judges? We have covered Deborah, Shamgar, Ehud. I think that is how it's pronounced. You guys know that I'm having difficulty pronouncing, and Othniel. So far we have covered four judges. So far, the first three have been pretty good. Now, in chapter 6 all the way to 8, we have the entire story that we have of Gideon. You know what's being recorded about his life, and um, it's a good story. It has so many details that I thought I knew. I thought I knew everything about the story, but in reading again, I found new details that I didn't know about the story, which made the story very interesting and very special. And this is like a lesson to everybody here. Sometimes we may open the Bible and realize, oh, today's reading is about a story I already know. Let me skip it, we may be tempted to do that, but I'm telling you guys, every time we read a story, no matter how many times we have heard it in sermons, how many times we have told this story in children classes, um, there's always something new to learn. And that's why we want to encourage you to read the Bible, because there's never a time where we should think that we know everything. We should always read, because in the Word of God, we find new things every single time we read it. So let us start away with chapter 6. What was chapter 6 about? We see that the people of Israel again departed from God. We see that in every single chapter, in every single story of every judge. We see that again, the people of Israel did wrong in the eyes of the Lord. And so God allows other nations to take over them, because simply and, very simply, the people of Israel just don't want God's protection. That's as simple as that. So God allows other nations to take over them. And in this case, the Midianites are the ones who oppress Israel. And I don't know if you remember, but in the first five books of the Bible, well, it's more specifically in the journeys, when the people of Israel fought other lands and other kingdoms, they defeated the Midianites. So God already gave them victory over the Midianites, but now they disobeyed God. They no longer want His protection, and now they fall into the hands of an old enemy. So it is in the middle of so much oppression that God calls Gideon. Gideon, obviously, it says here he comes from like the smallest tribe, the smallest household, the most insignificant place. But this is kind of a lesson that God wants to give us. I'm already probably going ahead with the video, but if you notice that every single judge, they were unlikely as heroes. Nobody expected Deborah to be a hero. No one expected, Othniel or Shamgar to become heroes, but God used these people. Gideon, you know, in the eyes of society, he was very insignificant, yet God used him to bring victory to Israel. So in chapter 6, we see the oppression of Israel. Then we see Gideon being called, and Gideon accepting God's call, even though he's very fearful, he's very scared. He asks for a lot of signs, and we will get to that. That's going to be my application for today. He asks for signs in chapter 7. He gathers his men, thousands and thousands of people, but God gives him signs, reduces that number to 300. We have a movie called 300. Maybe it's based on this. I don't know. But he is left with 300 people for his army to defeat the Midianites. We see a theme of Gideon still being scared. And But God gives him signs. God doesn't depart from Gideon. In chapter 8, we see him become victorious over the Midianites. God gives the victory to the 300 people, and a lot of Israelites, a lot of the tribes that see and witness um, the glory and the victory of Gideon's army, they decide to join in, right? And for a moment, everybody's coming back to God again. However, at towards the end of chapter 8, I believe that Gideon didn't do things right and didn't do the correct things, in the eyes of God. So let us go to our 3 points. The first point is, what new things I learned. I actually learned a lot of things. Let's see. When God called Gideon, Gideon actually, I know if you read the chapter where God asks for signs. We know the famous sign of the fleece, right? When it's wet and God getting asked for it to be dry. Uh, I didn't know that there was a sign before that, which is, when he put bread and meat on top of the altar, I believe, and God just sent fire or set it on fire and it consumed it. That was like the first sign. So that I didn't know. That was pretty interesting. Also, I would like to touch this because we kind of talked about this a little bit in yesterday's video about the angel of the Lord. It says here that the angel of the Lord came and talked and spoke to Gideon. And like I told you guys, I believe the angel of the Lord is the Lord himself. And here are our other clues if you want to study and find out for yourself. In chapter 6, verses 13. Well, in verse 11, we know that the angel of the Lord is speaking to Gideon, and Gideon responds, "Oh my Lord." Like he acknowledges that he is the Lord. In chapter 14, the author writing this chapter, he says that the angel of the Lord spoke to Gideon. And then in verse 14 of the same chapter, he says, then the Lord turned to him and said. So this is continuing the narrative or the interaction between the angel of the Lord and Gideon, and the author refers to the angel of the Lord as the Lord himself again in verse 14. More clues to why I believe that the angel of the Lord is Jesus Christ, is also God. So, continuing with the new things that I didn't know, in chapter 7, I didn't know that Gideon was called by another name, which is Jerubbaal. And this was given to him because of what he did with the altar of Baal that was found in his father's home. If you read the story, that was also very interesting. But yeah, he was referred to as Jerubbaal, and I didn't know that either. Let's see. So now let's go to the questions that I have. Here, one question that popped into my head. In the beginning of chapter 6, in verse 8, it says that when the people were being oppressed by the Midianites, they wanted to be delivered. And God sent them a prophet, and saying that God will deliver them again. And I just want to know, who is this prophet? Or were there so many prophets during the time that we don't even know? Like, their identities or their names, because it doesn't say anything about this prophet. It just says that God sent a prophet to them, giving them words of encouragement. Now I wonder, this kind of leads me to another question. Did these other prophets ever write of some things, And did God have prophets in other parts of the continent there? And do they have sacred readings inspired by God? What if there are more books inspired by God other than the ones that made it into the Bible? I'm pretty sure God guided the process of the Bible, and so all the sacred writings that we need are found here. But maybe, God used other people, some other places. There might be others, writings, other places that are inspired by God, but we are not. They have not been included in the Bible. That kind of that's opens up to so many possibilities. It can be um, uh, if it interests you, you may go deeper into studying these things. What other civilizations during this time kind of had similar beliefs to the people of Israel? Some people say, well, I don't believe in the Bible because in other manuscripts, in other historical records, we see other people from faraway places than where the people of Israel dwelt, having kind of similar beliefs to them. And they'd be like, oh, okay, so that means the Israelites copied the religion from other places, and now they want to say that this is the word from God, right? For example, the Koto Hammurabi, for example, Confucius, right? They saying a lot of things from the Bible is copied from the writings of Confucius. How do we know that God didn't use other people, right? How do we know that God also God didn't give sacred writings similar to what we find in the Bible to other places from far away during this time? I don't think just because we see historic records that themes of the Bible are found in other religions and other places of earth during this ancient times that the Bible is just a copy of everything of other religions or other sacred writings or other philosophers during that time. It to me doesn't discredit that. But yes, this is a very interesting topic, and I hope this sparks interest in you into studying more about this. I'm we as Christians we need to be open minded and accepting what some historians may say and studying what they say. But we also need to realize that the Bible says that God created everybody and God manifests themselves to everybody. So even though we may hear things like, oh, Bible's plagiarism from other places, like, we can think about this, we can analyze this, that God also inspired other people, with similar messages. I believe that. We shouldn't be scared when scientists or historians claim certain things, because I think that most of the time we can reconcile these things. But I'm going off on a tangent here. Let's go back to the reading. That's one of the things, questions that I have. So now let us go straight into what message does God have for me. The message that really impressed me was that, oh, before we go to that, one last thing I learned was that even though Gideon received so many signs, I thought that the last sign was a sign of the fleas. Uh, but apparently, before he attacked the Midianites, he heard Midianites um, talking about, one officer mentioned a dream that he had, and the other officer gave the interpretation of the dream. So in that interpretation, Gideon knew that God actually was gonna deliver the Midianites into his hands. Who gave that dream to these two soldiers, and how did they know the meaning? Did God give a prophecy to non-believers? That's another question that I have. Um, uh, so then let's go straight into the lesson now that I fully said what I needed to say about that, about the question section. Now let's go to the place where God talks to us, where we learn a new lesson from God. Guys, Gideon was a scary cat, and I think he was scared his entire life. That's one of his essential characteristics, that he was a scary person. I mean, not a scary person, but he was a person who was always scared. He asked for a sign. Like his first sign was incredible. Fire consuming food out of nowhere. That's impressive, but he's still scared. He then asked for the sign for the fleas, and he asked it again and again. And then before the battle, he's even scared until God gives him another sign with the two soldiers of Midian. This gives me one thing, guys. It's okay to be scared. God doesn't get angry. It doesn't. The Bible doesn't say that God got angry because Gideon feared. God did not get angry because he was scared. And God does not get angry when you are scared. God understands. God invented feelings. He works through feelings, I believe. A lot of people like to take feelings away. So he knows the feeling of fear, even though he might not have created fear, but he knows that feeling. He knows what you feel. He knows that you're scared, and he is ready to help you when you feel scared. God was not angry, even though I would have been angry at Gideon, because I'm like, bro, you've seen so many signs, yet you're still scared. How is it possible that you're still scared? You know, Regular people would have been so angry at Gideon, but God wasn't. God understood. I don't think it came from a place of unfaithfulness. It didn't come from a place of malicious intent. Gideon was genuinely scared, and he just wanted more information. Don't be afraid to ask God for signs. Don't be afraid. Some people don't like it because they're saying, oh, it's because you lack faith in God. Okay. Like, what's the problem? God is okay with you asking him for signs, and God is ready to show his power, to show you that you are not alone and that he is with you. God is ready to do that for you. Unfortunately, in the story of Gideon, God always gave him signs, but as we see towards the end of chapter 8, like, even when he captured the two kings that he was going to kill, he asks his little son or a kid to kill those people, right? Like, what type of man does that? Like, what type of person does something like that? Asks a kid to kill two grown men. And then Gideon tells the people, I will not be your king, God will be your king. But then he sets up a shrine, ephod. God did not command that. God didn't tell him to do that. And what happened? A lot of people used that shrine that he built, or that the ephod that he built in this particular place where the angel of the Lord spoke to him, as a means of practicing idolatry. and playing the harlot again. Then, actually, this is a detail for next chapter, but you know, um, God didn't want, kings, and as we read in the previous books. But He says, if you choose a king, these are the things that a king should follow: one wife, all these things, not take all the riches. What do we see Gideon do? He did say, I won't be your king. But he took tons of wives, which was against the law. And he took a lot of riches, which was something that a king was supposed to be limited at. Actually, let me just go to this detail. In chapter 9, he has a son. Actually, no. I think I'll mention it because he mentions it at the end of chapter 8. He has a son and he names it Abimelech, son of a concubine. So this man didn't just have wives, he had lots of concubines. It's terrible because God did not approve of this. He, he Gideon told the people he won't become a king, but yet he named his son Abimelech, which means my father is king. Guys, you may be scared like Gideon, but God's there to prove that you are not alone. But at the end of the day, it's your choice whether you want to stay with God when He gives you the victory or not. God gave the victory to Gideon, and I believe that he kind of went off the wrong path after that. Guys, when God gives you something or He gives you the thing that you prayed for, don't leave God. Be thankful to Him. Don't leave Him because He is the one who gave you. Sometimes I believe that is the reason why God doesn't give us certain things, because He knows that when He gives us that, we might leave Him, right? Guys, let us be really careful of what we ask God. But if God is calling you to do something and you feel like you're unworthy or you feel like you're too small for the big challenge, and like Gideon was the smallest family, the most insignificant family, yet he was used to become a hero. Guys, God is not, he doesn't get angry because you're scared. It's okay to be scared. Be genuine with your feelings. God is with you. He will not leave you alone. This was the reading for today. It was very interesting. I liked it a lot. I hope you guys also learned so much from this reading. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. I cannot wait to keep on reading the book of Judges because there's so many interesting stories. There's so many interesting lessons that we will learn, details, stories that we've never heard before that are fun. And it's going to be cool sharing these stories with you guys. So I'll see you again tomorrow and have a happy Sabbath.